All right, folks, so let's start. My name is Paweł. I'm very happy to see you all here. Right. Today we'll be talking about survival in haunted project. So how to deal with monsters in your project. Let's start with a little bit of story. Let's get back 100 years ago. Imagine you are a private detective and you got a job. You have to retrieve some documents from a mansion. The owner of the mansion disappeared in mysterious circumstances. Some of you see where it's going, right? There was a game in the 90s about this. So you are hired by the family of this owner, right? You arrive at the scene. There is this great mansion, right? You get in, and what happens? The doors are closing behind you. You can't escape, right? But there is a job to be done. So you go to the second floor, third floor. You get the documents, but quite quickly you realize that the mansion is in fact haunted. Right? There are some monsters, there are some ghosts, undead, zombies, dead bodies falling out of the closet everywhere. Does this somehow sound familiar to you? Right, so whenever you are just starting in a project or you are there for years, you might often have the situation that there's a lot of issues, a lot of monsters, a lot of problems, a lot of traps, a lot of dead bodies falling out of the closet. Right? And basically, it might seem that, okay, if you are in IT or sitting in front of the computer, you're kind of safe, right? What bad stuff can happen compared to this poor guy who is in the haunted mansions with actual monsters, right? But in general, if we don't like our project, if something is going wrong, if you're unhappy, if you are stressed, if you're depressed because of the project, if every day you think that I don't want to go to work next day, this takes a toll on you, right? It might get you to some dark places. You might, get into some kind of professional burnout. You might get into depression, and depression can kill you in the end, right? So this is kind of serious matter, and we are going to address it today. A few words about me. I used to be a Java developer. I was coding for roughly 12 years professionally, and then I moved to the dark side, and now I'm taking care of 11 times teams of mostly DevOps folks, but also developers. I used to be Java, now more Python. In Ksibia, Poland. I join you today from Wrocław in Poland. This is my contact information if you would like to do virtual high five. This QR code leads to my LinkedIn. I'm also on some other social media, and I have a blog. It's called How to Train Your Java, but it's not really strictly about Java anymore. It's more about general software and peopleware. There are slides from this presentation there. There is no recording yet because I think this is the first one in English. There's maybe one in Polish if you fancy the Polish version. All right, so let's get to our plan. So first we have to answer some fundamental questions. What do we want from our projects and in life in general? Then we are going to look into our particular monsters or problems. So what can happen and how can we try to somehow approach it, solve it, or maybe deal with that, right? And at the end, some, let's say, miscellanea. If you don't know how to name the last chapter of the presentation, miscellanea usually works. All right, so what do we really want in life? There's a great book by Daniel Pink, Drive. Has anyone read it? Nobody. It's the book about motivation, right? What do we want? If we are unhappy in a project, usually it's because we are unmotivated. And what do we want to be motivated? There is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We want to be autonomous. So we'd like to get in the boat and be able to steer it, like row it, see some direction, and see some result of our actions, right? We like mastery. So in general, in IT, we are usually enthusiastic about technology and what we do. It's cool to learn new stuff and get better at it. And also, maybe you wouldn't like to admit it, but if somebody else notices that you are good at something, it feels good, right? It brings your ego up. So mastery is nice. And purpose, we wouldn't like to just move bytes from one place to another. It would be nice if there is some sense in this. It makes somebody's day better, right? So those three pillars. And if we are missing one of those or more in our project, then usually we are unhappy. So now, what can we do? What can a biological organisms do when there is some unwanted stimuli, right? we can try to somehow fight it, change it, right? There's a monster, so we take our sword and try to hack and slash this monster, right? Defeat it, solve the problem in our project. But it's sometimes problematic, sometimes not possible. So we can try to somehow adapt to this, accept it. There is still the monster, but maybe we can, befriend the monster or maybe sneak past the monster. So the problem is still there, but we did something in our head, right, that is better for us. We can tolerate this. It's not this bad situation anymore, right? And we have always the third possibility. We can escape, right, from the stimuli. So we can quit our job, right, or change the project. And the question is, can we, right? Much as this story from the 90s horror computer PC game, we are trapped in the mansion, and first we have to do something complicated, maybe fight the boss in the dungeon, maybe solve some ritual or something. It's not always easy in life to quit, right? Maybe you have a mortgage for your house, maybe you have a baby on the way, maybe you don't have any savings, maybe the market is bad, maybe you're afraid. There might be a lot of reasons why you wouldn't like to just quit your job, right? So we will focus on those two options, how to change something and how to accept what is happening. There's another nice book by Chip and Dan Heath, Switch. It's a book about making changes. It's a metaphor of a rider on an elephant that is going through the road, right, through the environment. So basically the rider is the conscious you, right, the rational you. You have to know what to do in order to have the change facilitated, right? Then the elephant is the emotional you. The elephant is very powerful but difficult to steer, so you have to want to change, actually, and you have to be able to convince other people to change something if it's not in your power, right? And then we have the environment. So you can model the environment, the path, so that it kind of steers you in the right direction. Like imagine you want to be on a diet, you want to lose some weight, and there is a bag of potato chips in your kitchen, right? And you are fighting. Okay, I'm not going to eat those chips. I'm not going to eat those. I will just eat the half of it, 1/3, right? It's a problem. But if you don't buy these chips, right? If you don't have it in your kitchen, this is shaping the environment to help you facilitate the change. And this is also often a good strategy. So we can change something. We can try to accept something, right? How we feel in our project, this is in our head, basically. You can have 3 people in a project. The project is the same, but one person is very happy, for other person it's okay, and the third person is depressed, right? But this is still the same project, right? So how you perceive the reality, there is this model in your head of the reality. You filter everything through a filter system. And basically we can tweak this a little bit. First of all, you have to be aware that we are very susceptible to change, not to the level, but to the change, right? If you are in a very good project and you go to good project, this is a bad change for you. You are unhappy. Somebody is in a very bad project and goes to good project, you'll be very happy, right? Because it's a good change. In general, we react twice as strong to negative changes as opposed to positive changes. So imagine if you lose 100 euro, the emotional change is the same as if you gain 200 euro in a different direction, right? But the same strength. There's a nice book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, about System 1 and System 2 in your head. That's quite a big book, but really interesting. I recommend you to check it out. There's a lot of interesting phenomena described there. All right, let's get into concretes. So we have the guide to our huntings. We are going to look at some specific monsters now. So first monster. There is this weird creature in a suit with a tie, right? The business. It's difficult to talk to the business. He's saying stuff we don't understand as developers, right? We are trying to talk to this creature and it doesn't understand us, right? So there is this thing called curse of knowledge. It starts in small children, basically. Small children assume that everything they know and how they feel, everyone else feels the same and knows the same, right? And we grow up from this to an extent, but still we kind of assume that other people know what we know, right? And we use some shortcuts, we use technical jargon, talking to non-technical people, and it causes some problems, right? So what can you do with that? Think about some simple analogies often. For instance, you are a DevOps and you are trying argue about investing into infrastructure, right? But the business says we want features, not what's infrastructure. We don't need infrastructure. The client does not pay for this, right? So imagine you are buying a house. What do you want in a house? You want walls, you want some roof, right? You don't care about foundations. What is foundations, right? But this is needed, right? And most of us know about this kind of instinctively. So analogies are your friend. Remember that business is there for our clients, but we are there for the business, basically. So this kind of on our end as developers, to make sure that we can understand each other. Think about the other person, try to get into their shoes. There's often a lot of pressure on business people from clients, investors, time, money, etc. And some of this can spill right to developer teams. So remember, they are often under pressure. Be empathetic and be patient with the communication. Then let's get into the dungeon. Right? There is this old monolith in the dungeon often. Right? This very old piece of software that is surrounded by our nice shiny microservices. Right? But this old piece of software usually earns most of the money or almost all of the money. Some people don't want to touch this. Right? Some people want to refactor stuff and improve and update, and they go to the business and express this desire to fix stuff, but the business is saying it doesn't bring money, right? Why should we do this? So who is your friend here? Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel. If there is anything you can change in software, you can try to estimate, calculate how much you can earn on this, real money. Imagine, for instance, you want to speed up the build process. It takes 20 minutes, right? You are annoyed because of it. If you just go to the business and tell them, hey, I'm annoyed because of the slow build, so what they are supposed to think about this, right? Well, the guy is annoyed, well, that's his problem, right? What can we do? But if you calculate, okay, you have 20 minutes per build, times number of builds per day, times number of developers, times number of days in a year, that would save us 20 days, let's say, and we need to invest just 2. And you put it into the, Microsoft Excel, right? You go to the business, and then you have some case, some nice opportunity, and it works quite better. You can document some decline of velocity when the quality of code deteriorates. Usually we are slower with adding new features. If you are working in Scrum, you have some nice dashboards for this. You can sometimes notice the trend that similar tasks are getting slower. You can go with this to the business. In one project, we did this recurring brainstorming every quarter or something. We're thinking about strictly technical features that would be cheap to implement and would give a lot of benefits. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of benefits, small benefits, expensive, cheap, so we just show to the business those cheap ones with a lot of benefits, and suddenly they let us do it from time to time, right? And it was nice. Sometimes when the disaster strikes, there is your window of opportunity to fix stuff. You can fix the stuff that caused the disaster, the fire on the production or the security leak or something, but also you have this opportunity to add a little bit extra to it, maybe fix something else around, because the management already has the mindset that, okay, let's fix some stuff. Right? The techies will tell us what to do, and they can agree. And also, understanding the strategy is often very useful if you understand why something is being done. Right? You have all this technical debt, and technical debt is, not something bad by itself. It's an instrument, a mechanism, much as in finance. Like you take a debt, you can do nice stuff, but you have to pay the debt. Maybe the CEO wants to sell the company in half a year, right? And needs to add some critical features now, take some debt, and then can earn a lot of money and buy another Porsche, right? So that's annoying, maybe, but if you know that this might be the case, then it's not that bad, I guess. In general, when you are talking with clients, imagine that you are a barber, right? It's a client. You are a barber. Imagine you have a client who has haircut with some barber for 20 years, and something happens, so he goes to you, and he wants his hair to be cut in the very same way. You are looking at this client, and if you're thinking that, it won't really fit very well because of the shape of the face, times change, etc., etc. So your obligation is to tell it, right, that maybe it's not the best idea, I would recommend something like that. But if you just, force it on a client, then probably he won't get back to you, right? So in the end, we have the responsibility to advise, but in the end, the client is always right, because the client pays, right? We might encounter this situation, the broken window. Anyone is familiar with the broken window theory? I have some people. Yeah, the origin is in the 80s, I believe, in the United States. They noticed that if you broke one window in the neighborhood and you fix it quickly, then it's okay. But if you leave it broken for some time, then another window will be broken, another, and then everything goes to shit in the end. Right? And it's similar in our code. When we have nice, clean code, everything is tested and beautiful, then people will just keep it that way. But if somebody forgets the test, do some hacks, 1, 2, third hack, in the end, people stop to care, because why should I care if the whole code base is just bad, right? And this is the broken Windows problem. And how to get away from this? It's tricky. You might try to, just say that from this a big task, big epic, maybe new module, new part or something, we are doing things right. It might work sometimes a little bit, but it's tricky, right? In one project we had actually, one company, we had a nice idea about this. We had this Boy Scout competition. You know the Boy Scout rule? What is the Boy Scout rule in software development? Yeah. Basically, when it's like with Boy Scouts in the forest. You get in the forest, you clean after yourself, but then you also clean out a bit about everyone else, right? So similar in code. You fix some stuff that you broke, but also clean up a little bit around, right? So what we did was we were printing out the code. It was before COVID, right? So we had an physical office. So we were printing out the code before, after, and there is actually voting for the best scout of the week, of the month, and of the year, right? And there were some prizes for it. And it was quite fun. A lot of people fixed a lot of code because of this competition. So you might think about trying this, actually. All right, let's see our next monster as the puppeteer, right? The puppeteer is able to control your mind, tell you what to do. And we don't really like this often when people are telling us what to do, especially if they don't know what they are doing, right? So basically, think about micromanagement. First of all, again, trying to get into the shoe of the person that is standing in front of you. Often there's a lot of pressure on them, really a lot of pressure, and they are spilling some of this pressure on the development teams, right? And they are asking, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet, right? Maybe have some suggestions how to do stuff, because they are just stressed, right? If you are new in the team, maybe first you have to show that you are competent. You need some time to get trust from management, right, from your leaders. And after that, it might get better. Also, there is this psychological principle, the mere exposure principle. If you just spend time with your person, 20, 40 hours, something like this, usually you get to like each other. Usually, not always. Sometimes it's the opposite, right? But usually it helps. So if you go for integration, drink some beer or something, get a coffee in the office, it might help you with micromanaging managers, right? And also if you are working in some multicultural teams, global organizations, there is this, there are those different scales on different countries, how people behave as a baseline, right? So some are more organized, some are less organized, or some have higher power distance or lower power distance. If you have high power distance, then the boss is very, very important for you, right? For instance, in India, there is very high power distance. In Scandinavia, it's very low. So my boss is my buddy, basically. So if a country has high power distance and it has low uncertainty avoidance, tolerance, then they tend to be a little bit micromanaging. So be mindful about this as well. Our next monster, the mummy. Right? The mummy is very slow, but if the mummy gets you, the mummy will wrap you in these bureaucratic papers, and you won't get anything done. Basically, it will be very slow. So you have to create tickets for everything. The tickets have to have multiple approvals and stuff like this. Right? It's very annoying. Right? So what to do with this? Again, Microsoft Excel. Right? Be transparent about the cost. Right? If you couldn't get the virtual machine you needed in time. You failed the sprint. Some two teams were waiting for your API, and they failed their sprint. So it's already you can calculate how much time was lost, and time equals money. And you can calculate how much money we lost on our process. And then with this kind of data, we can go to the process makers and try to negotiate. Okay, maybe we don't need 7 approvals, maybe 6 will do, for instance, right? So calculating costs. You can try to carve some responsibility for you. So maybe you don't need to ask about every virtual machine. Maybe you can get some pool of virtual machines or whatever that you can manipulate yourself, right? You can try this angle. You can anticipate that you are going to need something. So maybe create a small task in a sprint to get some, access, even the sprint before. Maybe sometimes you won't need this access. But this is like, with cache in the processor, right? We use cache because we anticipate something. Sometimes we miss, but still in the end it's faster, right? You can always add your CC, your manager in email, stuff like this. And again, be mindful about cultures. Cultures that have this high uncertainty tolerance is low, right? So they have to everything written and bureaucratic. They often tend to have these big processes if you work in a multicultural environment. All right, next monster that we have. There are types of monsters that can turn you into stone, right? So basically, you feel in a project that you can't move. You are frozen in time. The technology is not changing for 10 years, right? And you are getting bored in the end. You can't self-develop, hone your skills, basically. So your mastery is difficult to feel that you are having some mastery in general. So what can you do there? You can try to just find some maybe business niche that will be fun for you. Maybe you like trains, for instance. Maybe there is some part of the system that deals with trains. I don't know, reservation, planning, something like this. Maybe there are train pictures, whatever. Could be fun sometimes, even in old technology. You can try to be proactive. Like, for instance, often my people come to me. I'm working in a software house, so I have people that are working for different clients, right? Different projects, and they are saying that they don't have any opportunity to hone their skills in a project. I'm asking, okay, so what have you proposed to do? Nothing, right? You have to be proactive. Stuff doesn't happen on its own. Try to think about some proof of concept, trying new technology, and maybe it will work. Maybe they will let you do this. It can help us a little bit if we think about ourselves that we are not developers, but problem solvers, right? We are there to solve business problem for a client. Usually it's by writing code, sometimes configuration, but sometimes it's just sending an email or chatting, in the coffee machine or something. Right? If you solve the business problem, that's great. When we have difficulties in our project, this is self-development by itself. And when we are solving some organizational problems, people problems, it develops us. And often those are skills that can be transferred to real life, right? If you are arguing with your wife, then knowledge about Kubernetes might not be useful very much, right? But if you had some difficult managers or developers or whatever, maybe it will help you a little bit, right? And also remember that tools that we are using, those are just tools, right? Medieval blacksmith is using a hammer for 50 years, basically, and it just works, right? So sometimes we learn technology that is not nice or not useful beside this project, but it gets the job done, and business is paying us for getting the job done, right? That's why we are there, not to have fancy stuff, unfortunately. Remember about hydration in your project. But now, sometimes we can find this part of our mansion. It's nice garden in the courtyard, right? Nice green, we can get there, forget about all those monsters, right? So sometimes if you can't find anything in your project, maybe there is something beside your project that you could do. Maybe you could be a team leader, for instance, help people develop and improve your people skills. Maybe you can do technical recruitment, right? Maybe you can mentor people, teach them some nice stuff. Maybe you can consult other teams, help them with some complicated, specific technical problems. Maybe you can create content, maybe write some blog articles, go to the conferences, talk to people, etc. And maybe there are these 3 dots. You can just figure out something that you could like and propose this, right? In software development, we are in this very privileged position that we can often do a lot of things without changing the label. I can be still senior developer, right? And I can try different stuff. And they let us do this often, right? This is really cool. Not many other industries give you those opportunities. Okay, next, darkness, I see. Sometimes you don't see purpose in what you are doing. You're just moving bytes from one place to another and doesn't make any sense. So how to try to combat this? You can try to get to know your users if it's possible, right? Maybe you can try to use the application that you're creating. I had this opportunity once. We were doing an aggregator for travel, and I actually have bought a ticket there, and it actually worked, and it went through my if, right? And it was kind of fun, really. If you are creating some internal product, then you can actually try to get those users because they might be in the same building, right? Some companies have a lot of they try to make people, software developers, understand what they are really, who is using their software. So for instance, there's a grocery store in the UK. When on the first day of your job, you are put in the warehouse or with the courier who is delivering the groceries, right? And you can actually see how those people use the software that you will be writing later. This is kind of nice. Sometimes you might have some just sudden realization. So I had this moment once. I was driving in Germany on the autobahn, and there was like endless lines of trucks next to me, and I was working in a logistics company, mostly for German market then, and suddenly it struck me that each of those trucks might be a lot of entries in our shipment table, right? There are actually packages there that somebody ordered, somebody is delivering just right next to me. People get their packages and they are happy, and suddenly it kind of made sense quite a bit more, right? In the same company, we had a nice visualization of our business. There was a dashboard in the lobby with the nice map and points, lines, where somebody is ordering a package, a number of how many packages were delivered a day. And also, people were staring at this with coffee or something and thinking, yeah, that's my code. That's nice. All right, moving on. We encounter sometimes these cryptic messages trying to tell us what to do. All right, problematic bad user stories in our backlog. I don't know what to do with them. Who even wrote that? It's stupid. So what can you do with this? Get to know your business. Basically, if you are on a good footing with your product owner, with the business analyst, whatever, it's always easier to get a clarification of what this person really meant on the story, or maybe negotiate a little bit how the user story should look. Right? We have this acceptance criteria for a feature in the user story, and we can also have acceptance criteria for a story to be added to product backlog. Right? Like the story have to have this element as somebody, I need this because of something, etc. Right? So you can have a contract on user stories. It's nice to have some time to prepare. So whenever you plan a refinement, for instance, maybe 3 days earlier, the product owner could send out the stories that we are going to estimate. You can spend 15 minutes on it, just look at it. Some questions might pop up in your head, right? And you can ask those questions on the refinement, get some answers, and you can fix the story on the spot, and it will be better later, right? Again, transparency, so Microsoft Excel, right? What can go? I should really work for Microsoft at this point, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I should get the commit. I will call them after this presentation. I will call them, I will show them this recording. Yeah, so be mindful, make business mindful about the effect of bad user stories, how, you missed your deadline or something because of it. But also remember that the world is complicated. People make mistakes. We can predict everything, and the business is changing. So from time to time, the user story will be outdated, or you have to change something. So don't be this, ballerina or something that is saying, okay, it's a bad user story, I'm not developing it. Right? It's not a good approach. Try to be a little bit agile there. Speaking of deadlines, you might encounter this clock monster. Right? So often people are kind of stressed by the deadlines. So what can we do there? You can try to, again, talk to the business, and try to get on the same on the same page if it's a real deadline or not. Did we sign a contract in blood with a client? Is the company going to bankrupt if we miss this? Or was it just like, some manager said that 3 weeks, yeah, they should do this. And you are, coding for 16 hours per day with Red Bull's pizza, etc. And it was all for nothing. So get on the same page with the business. Again, empathy, right? They might have a lot of pressure, really a lot of pressure, and be really stressed about this. It's difficult to manipulate time, but you can manipulate scope, right? It might be the case that maybe not everything is really needed for this release to be successful. Maybe we can simplify something. For instance, do something later, put some placeholders, etc. So if you know you are not going to make it, just talk, negotiate the scope. Maybe you can do a little bit less, be on time, and everyone will be happy, right? Try to remind the business that what we are estimating is not commitments, right? Story point do not translate to mandates, right? This is our best guess what we can do. Does any one of you use 2 estimations for 50 and 90%, for instance? Right, so there's an idea that you can estimate tasks that, okay, I'm 50% certain that this is 3 story points, but in order to be 90% certain that we will do this, I will need 7, 8 story points, whatever the number is. If those 2 numbers are very different, then this is a sign that this task is risky, right? We are not sure about this, how to do this. We are approaching the end, almost. The last monster, the undead orchestra, so distractions in our project. Often people tell me that there's just a lot of noise in their project and they can't focus. Right? Somebody wants something every time. That's problematic. So what can we do? We can have the supporter of the week, also called as sufferer of the week. We can get this person out of the sprint, right? So he doesn't have any story points to do, but it's just focused on answering all the questions on Slack for the team, looking at the production, all the noise, right? Shielding the team from all the distractions. Maybe if you are working in Scrum, maybe you shouldn't, right? It's especially true often for DevOps teams that have a lot of ongoing stuff and production monitoring, etc. But Kanban might be better, or some other solution maybe that is more flexible here. Also, there is this magic window of 2 hours. In 2 hours, usually if you do not respond in 2 hours, nothing bad will happen, right? In the past, it was often the case that we went for a meeting, physically in the office without our laptop for 2 hours. We were not available. We were doing some other stuff, and it was normal. So if you try to turn off your Teams or Slack or whatever email for 2 hours and focus, you can often get more done than entire 8 hours of being in the standby mode, distractions and stuff, right? And it shouldn't be a problem, unless of course you just released and maybe don't just disappear for 2 hours. So be conscious about this. But in general, often you can do a lot. There's this Pomodoro method that you hyper-focus for 25 minutes, then 5 minutes break, repeat 4 times, right? And you can do really a lot there. If you have a lot of questions from other teams, maybe you need a little bit better documentation for your product, right? And be mindful about context switching being costly. So for instance, if you add a meeting to someone else's calendar, just maybe put it next to other meetings so that there is at least one less context switching between this. All right, a few other, where were we in time? Oh, it was actually a bit faster. I was going to say that this is the last lecture in this room, so I could talk for 3 hours and nobody can stop me, even this guy. But don't worry, we won't. All right, so your battles. When you are picking your battles, you can't win all your battles that you have. You don't have resources for that. So just focus on 1 or 2 things that where you can actually change something, and focus on that and leave the rest for later. We'll see what happens. When you are in a project, you are unhappy, everything is going badly, remember that this is the present situation, but it will change probably. It will change the company, it will change the project will change, whatever, and you won't be in pain in a few years probably, right? What's left for you is experience, right? And the best experience is from the trenches, basically, with difficult stuff. And it stays with you. You can, have these discussions after years that, yeah, 50 years ago we did this and that. And it was cool. It wasn't back then, but when you speak about this, it is. And again, there's no useless projects, because a project can always be used as a bad example, right? If you were in just one project, then you are not sure if this is how IT is done, or is it just our team or our company or what. If you were in 2, 3, 4 projects, you have those points of reference, and you know what you really want from the project, and it's helpful. So you have to, it's best to be in like 4 or 5 projects maybe, and then you probably focus on picking the next one very good, or the next company very good, right? In the end, remember that you are not your work. Right, you are you, and work is just one part of what you are doing. So if there's a lot of stress and issues and problems at work, it's good to have this ability to distance yourself a little bit from that. I know it's difficult sometimes, but at some point you have to be able to say that, okay, I did everything professionally that I could, now it's on you, not my circus, not my monkeys. Right? I will keep my distance. It's healthy. Then I know that everything looks good in front of a great explosion, right? But when you decide to use this atomic option, right, this quitting the company, you might often have this urge to just to tell them, right? Tell them how bad it was, how somebody screwed up, how stuff was done there. Often they are starting to write this long email, and my advice is don't. Really don't. You don't know who you are going to be working with in 5 years, 10 years, what company. It's really not worth it to burn your bridges, right? To live like a toxic outcome of the project, right? Sometimes I had a lot of situations, not necessarily when I was thinking about quitting my jobs, but when I was angry that I started to type this email. Right? I was 1 hour into this email, and at the end I thought, okay, no, I deleted all of that and haven't sent this. Right, so give yourself time, at least 1 day. Right? If you are really committed to sending this important email, maybe you think, okay, I will get to this tomorrow, and hopefully you will delete it. Right? You will not send it. All right, folks, so take care about yourself, take care about people around you. Thank you very much.